Yamuna Tira Bana Chari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupadam Saparajitaya Stote Satasi Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupadam Saparajitaya Stote Satasi Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 4. Vidura approaches Maitreya. Text 1. Uddhava uvacha atate tad anugyata bhuktva pitva chavaruni taya vibramshita jnana durakta Duruktar Marma Pasprishu Atate Tadanugyata Bhuktva Pittva Chavaruni Taya Vibramshita Jnana Duruktar Marma Pasprishu Atate Tadanugyata Bhuktva Pittva Chavaruni Taya Vibramshita Jnana Duruktar Marma Pasprishu Uddhava Uvacha. Uddhava said, Ata, thereafter, Te, they, the Yadavas, Tat, by the Brahmanas, Anugyata, being permitted, Bhuktva, after partaking, Pittva, drinking, Cha, and Varuni, liquor, Taya, by that, Vibramshita Jnana, being bereft of knowledge, Duruktai, with harsh words, Marma, the core of the heart, Pasprishu, touched. Translation. Thereafter, all of them, the descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja, being permitted by the Brahmanas, partook of the remnants of prasada and also drank liquor made of rice. By drinking, they all became delirious, and bereft of knowledge, they touched the cores of each other's hearts with harsh words. Purport. In ceremonies, when Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are sumptuously fed, the host partakes of the remnants of foodstuff after the guest has given permission. So the descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja formally took permission from the Brahmanas and ate the prepared foodstuff. Kshatriyas are permitted to drink at certain occasions, so they all drank a kind of light liquor made of rice. By such drinking, they became delirious and bereft of sense, so much so that they forgot their relationship with one another and used harsh words which touched the cores of each other's hearts. Drinking is so harmful that even such a highly cultured family becomes affected by intoxication and can forget themselves in a drunken state. The descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja were not expected to forget themselves in this way, but by the will of the Supreme it happened, and thus they became harsh towards one another. Translation again. Thereafter, all of them, the descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja, being permitted by the Brahmanas, partook of the remnants of the prasada, and also drank liquor made of rice. By drinking, they all became delirious, and, bereft of knowledge, they touched the cores of each other's hearts with harsh words. Om Agana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hey Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hey Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We often fail to properly understand the impact of harsh words. And this verse tells us that the harsh words spoken among the Yadu dynasty penetrated the core of the heart. It would seem that why should someone be so affected just because of someone's uttering harsh words? But we fail to grasp fully such an impact. Of course, in the case of the Yadus, this is all arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nevertheless, we can learn on many levels from this mystical exhibition, all arranged by Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the austerity of the tongue. Anudvega kayam vakyam satyam priya hitam chaya. Swajaya vyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. Krishna explains that the austerity of the tongue is that it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't speak words that agitate. What to speak of, penetrate the heart with harshness. The more we understand the havoc caused by tongues speaking words that destroy relationships, destroy communities, even destroying the world, the more we can understand the power of the tongue. What's the positive, though? Krishna doesn't simply give the negative, but he presents the positive. Satyam priya hitam. Words that are truthful. Words that are endearing. And words that are of benefit. And of course, that can all be accomplished by swajaya vyasanam chaiva, by speaking words that are in accord with the Shastra. But what do we do when we're in situations in which we can't just repeat a verse from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam? We should remember, and it takes some practice. What can I say in this situation that will lead to an increase in bhakti? It may seem impossible or difficult to do that, especially when you feel you're under pressure, under attack, or misunderstood. It's a great crime in the world today to feel that someone misunderstands you. Everyone wants to be understood. And of course, in the bodily conception of life, to be understood means that your body and mind is understood. That your bodily designation is honored, worshipped. And the other person should readily admit, I don't have the same upadi, I don't have the same bodily designation as you. You should recognize that and glorify my difference. And that is the peace formula. The more we exult in body differences, the more that we take pride in our bodily difference, the better the world will be. And you see today the result. More and more individuals, nations are at each other's throats. We would do well to remember Krishna's advice in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and that takes some effort. How can I speak words that don't cause disharmony, pain, agitation, madness, violence? What can I say that's truthful, endearing? Think about it. To say something that the other person becomes endeared to you. To always do that, to have that ability is something I pray for. how to use the tongue so that when you finish speaking, the other person feels more inspired in bhakti. Now you may say, but sometimes situations arise in which you have to say something unpalatable. I like the advice of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who advises that we shouldn't be so eager and enthusiastic to execute that task of speaking something unpalatable or speaking something that's chastising or correcting. In the history of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there was the example of one person in the moth, probably in Calcutta, and that person would go around correcting everyone. You're doing this wrong. You're not doing this right. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur called him in and said, you know, it's a great austerity correcting devotees. It's something I have to do because it's my service. But it's, take it from me, it's a very, it's a tough service to do. Why are you so anxious to take on such austerities? Why are you so fired up, so enthusiastic to do what you don't have to do? I have to do it because it's my service. And it weighs heavily on me, in other words. But you just going around correcting this one, correcting that one, it's not your service. Why do you want this austerity? That's something for us to remember. Parents have to correct their children. Teachers have to correct their students. Gurus have to correct their disciples. They can try. Often the reality is you can't tell a disciple what's fully on your mind because the disciple may just, well, how can you tell me that? I chose you as my spiritual master knowing that you would say the right things to me. First of all, I just wanted a picture on my altar. And now I'm getting more than I bargained for. Secondly, by your correcting me, you're agitating my mind. Some persons do have this service to correct. In the case of what happened with the Yadu dynasty, this is very mystical. But why should you consider Krishna's exit from this world to be something so inconceivable when his appearance in this world is inconceivable? In other words, let's go to the beginning of Krishna's appearance in this world, and then you won't consider the magic show of his disappearance as so exceptional. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma cha me divyam. If you can understand the mystery, the transcendental mystery of my so-called birth and my karma, my activities, if you can understand that in truth, then you know the rest. Upon giving up this material body, you won't take another material body. So the magic show starts with Krishna's appearance. First within the heart of Vasudeva, and then he's transferred to the heart of Devaki. And then there's no ordinary biological childbirth. Krishna, from within the heart of Devaki, appears outside her as a four-armed baby with hair and decorated with jewels and clothes. Those who are of materialistic consciousness would think that Krishna is born ordinarily, and now with the Moshla Leela, with the exit from this world, Krishna has died an ordinary death. He's born in an ordinary way, he dies an ordinary way. So Krishna gives that facility. You want to think I'm mundane? All right. I'm born ordinarily. You can look at my birth in that way and come to that conclusion. You can look at my so-called death, shot in the heel of the foot by an arrow. It's all there for you to remain in ignorance. The choice of the jiva to be in ignorance is very difficult to understand. How is it the pure soul can make the wrong choice? Many of our devotees battle over this. I was discussing yesterday or the day before, briefly with His Holiness Niranjan Maharaj, how in some parts of the ISKCON world there are pitched battles, intense battles over the origin of the jiva. It's true that Srila Prabhupada was extensively questioned on this very point. How can the jiva make the wrong choice? How can the jiva become overwhelmed by ignorance? He spoke very extensively about it. And then it's also true that there are quotations which would make you think otherwise. So His Holiness Niranjan Maharaj were remembering a statement by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that the whole situation of the jivas becoming misaligned is beyond time. How can you apply material logic and material sequencing, step 1, step 2, step 3, when all that is a product of thinking bound by time? So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, this whole phenomenon is outside the reach of our conditioned understanding. But that's a hard thing for us to accept. We've got to solve it. We've got to nail it. It's either this or it's that. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that first there'll be doubts, then there'll be arguments, and then anarthas. Unwanted things will arise in the heart. But no, that doesn't slow us down. His admonition, his warning, doesn't dissuade us. We can do it. We can grasp the inconceivable. In one chapter of Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 16, you'll find statements by Prabhupada on both sides. What about the Yadu dynasty? They're killing each other after becoming drunk. Of course, we would accept that as the arrangement of the Lord. Nevertheless, it's still extraordinary. It gives a chance for those of mundane consciousness to think, Krishna's an ordinary person, his dynasty, they're ordinary persons. When actually the whole situation is Krishna's ruse to move on in his display of Leelas. Narayan, the plenary portion of Krishna within Krishna, Swami Bhagavan, went back to Vaikuntha through this Moshla Leela, the annihilation of the Yadu dynasties. The demigods, the Devatas, were embedded, so to speak, within the eternal associates of the Lord. The Yadus who were Nitya Parshada, eternal associates. They had Devatas embedded within them. This phenomenon is explained very much in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So those Devatas went back to the heavenly planets. The plenary expansions of Krishna went back to Vaikuntha. And Krishna himself, Swayam Bhagavan, went into his uppercut Leela, his unmanifest Leela, in the present universe, and then he manifests in another universe. The whole situation has to be seen with spiritual vision. Otherwise, we won't grasp it at all. Whether Krishna's appearance or his disappearance. It could be said that why couldn't Krishna stay longer to satisfy his devotees? Isn't that the nature of Bhakta Vatsala? He's affectionate. He's full of affectionate exchanges with his devotees. Why can't he linger? Why does he have to go, causing such heartache? The description of Krishna's disappearance, at least in terms of the effects, begins in the first canto, with Yudhisthira and Arjuna lamenting. And then here in the third canto, you get several chapters. Chapter 2, this chapter 4, where the topic comes up again. And then in the 11th canto, you have 2 chapters, one at the beginning, another 1 or 2 at the very end of the 11th canto, all about Krishna's disappearance. So on the one hand, the acharyas say devotees don't like talking about it. On the other hand, it's there. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that, yes, the point could arise. If Krishna is so affectionate, why did he go? He went before everyone is satisfied by seeing him. There are verses in the Shastra where devotees lament, where is that form? We can no longer see it. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that no matter how long Krishna is in front of your eyes, you'll never be satisfied. You'll never see enough. He explains an example from the highest level of prem, sneha. This is described by Rupa Goswami. That the heart is liquefied, the beloved, the object of your love becomes even more illuminated, and you can never be satisfied, no matter how much you see Krishna. So who do you know like that you can look at and never be satisfied? I can't get enough. I can't get enough. That is how beautiful Krishna is. So don't accuse Krishna of being cruel by leaving before his devotees' eyes are fully satisfied. They'll never be fully satisfied. Yet it is part of Krishna's plan to increase their love through separation. And those feelings of separation are so intense that they bring what Prabhupada describes in the Krishna book as the bhava expansion of Krishna. A presence of Krishna in Vrindavan brought about in separation by the love of the devotees. I was just reading yesterday how when Uddhava went to Vrindavan to deliver the message, especially to the gopis, as well as to the other residents of Vrindavan, especially to the gopis, he was speaking words in the present tense when he began his relaying of the message in the presence of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. Krishna is coming. He promised he would come. He's coming, but he's speaking in the present tense. So the acharyas point out that actually what's going on is something Uddhava didn't know. Uddhava himself didn't know that Krishna is there reciprocating with Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. Uddhava didn't realize that, but still he's faithfully presenting the message from Krishna. He will return. He said that. He will do it. But he spoke his words in the present tense, not future. I'm saying he will come. But Uddhava was speaking in a way of like he's coming. In other words, he's here. But he didn't see that Krishna is there through the love of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai, and he's reciprocating with them. So understanding this disappearance of Krishna pushes us to understand what is real love. Krishna is thinking that the Yadus are so dear to him, they can't tolerate his moving on, his withdrawing, his prakat presence, his manifest presence. They can't handle that. They'll just trample the earth. They'll destroy the earth in their feelings of separation. They'll go mad. But how to move the Yadu dynasty on? You could say, well, Krishna could have just made them all disappear. But Krishna also wants to fulfill the desires of the materialists. There are jivas who want to see me as material. I've got to pull out the Yadu dynasty in such a way that those jivas who want to see me as an ordinary person, they'll have that wish fulfilled, that desire fulfilled. So therefore, this whole production of the Yadu dynasty, speaking harsh words to one another, uprooting canes on the shore of the ocean, and these canes became like iron, smashing each other in such violent combat, riding on horses, riding on elephants, riding on other human beings. What a scene. So again, you would say, all this just to withdraw the Yadu dynasty. I wonder how many of you wondered about that, those of you who have studied Bhagavatam. All this just to withdraw the Yadu dynasty? But Krishna is doing his departure in such an unforgettable way to satisfy everyone. You've also read in Srimad Bhagavatam that apparently some members of the Yadu dynasty were becoming too familiar with Krishna. They were taking his presence for granted. They were becoming a bit proud, a bit callous, insensitive toward the presence of the Lord. So Krishna wanted to teach them a lesson. But that so-called pride and insensitivity is another production arranged by Krishna. We are just marginal potency. We can be overwhelmed by another potency of Krishna, according to his desire. So when Prabhupada was present amongst us, several times devotees really pushed him. How is it the perfect jiva can choose wrongly? It's a point that baffles us to this day. And Prabhupada replied very extensively. He, as we would say idiomatically in English, he stuck to his guns. He said, that is the way of independence. If you can't misuse your independence, it's not independence. No, how can the pure soul make a wrong choice? And Prabhupada would not back off the point. This happened several times. He would not back away from the point. You have your independence given by Krishna. So that's one part of the puzzle. And then, of course, there are other statements that make you think, well, maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that. In this way, the debate goes on and on and on. So we can't ignore what Srila Prabhupada said. That doesn't mean we can discard statements by the previous acharyas that seem to indicate another aspect. In other words, why does it have to be contradiction? This contradicts that. Perhaps we don't have the realization to see the whole package. We can't put it all together. To do so, to admit that we just don't have the capacity to put it all together, takes some humility. We're being trained in assimilating paradoxical situations with this departure of the Yadu dynasty. They're drinking liquor. All right, Kshatriyas are allowed to drink a little at special occasions, but they've become delirious. They're speaking harsh words to one another. They're going to become violent. So Bhagavatam is training us how to see apparently contradictory phenomena in a harmonized way. The will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead triumphs over everything. Krishna had lessons to teach. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur extensively makes the point that Krishna wanted to make sure that people don't think just because you are born in a certain dynasty, vamsha, family, that everything you do is perfect. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives the example of Chaitanya Leela. Lord Chaitanya didn't leave behind any genealogical descendants. Nityananda Prabhu didn't recognize the sons of Virabhadra. And then the sons of Advaita Acharya, some of them went off, deviated. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that this is all pageantry to show that you must focus on spiritual qualification and not genealogical descent. So Krishna is teaching that lesson in a most dramatic way. I don't want people, in other words, Krishna is showing, I don't want people thinking just because you're born in the Yadu dynasty as a descendant in the future that automatically you're infallible like me. I don't want that to happen. Therefore, watch this show. Just see what happens to the Yadus. Meanwhile, it's Krishna's dramatic technique to move his Nitya Parshadas, his eternal associates, move them on to the next Leela display in the next universe. What about Dwarka? What happens? Krishna warns Uddhava, who is speaking here in the 4th chapter of 3rd canto. He warns Uddhava, the whole city of Dwarka is going to become inundated. And that's what happened. Everything was overcome by the ocean, by Krishna's will. Everything in Dwarka was overcome by the ocean, except Krishna's palaces. And Rupa Goswami explains a few palaces of chief Yadus. They were spared. Otherwise, the rest of Dwarka disappeared into the ocean. But in those remaining palaces, which are beyond human vision, they're unmanifest, Krishna is there eternally with his Nitya Parshadas, with his associates. So back to harsh words. It's very materially fulfilling to speak harsh words, isn't it? I told that person. Whether it's your own family, your spouse, or at your own temple or Namhata or Bhakti Vriksha or something, just to really unload on someone. Gives you a satisfying feeling that that's why mundane psychology in Kali Yuga advises that don't bottle up your anger. Don't bottle up your lust. Definitely don't do that. Just let it out, and that'll create a more balanced psychological state. This is Kali Yuga Jnana. Liberate yourself from inhibitions and restrictions. As Kali Yuga darkens, you'll find this mentality becoming more and more prevalent. I was shocked to see some social statistics from the USA. It's always good to beat up on the USA because they take statistics for everything there. And they're very accurate. How many know what an open marriage is? Raise your hands. Very few. It's the latest, it's the greatest. Both spouses agree that you can have relationships outside of the marriage as you like. Both agree. I give you my permission, you give me your permission, and we can diversify. I was shocked to find out in a so-called Christian country as the USA. It's funny because the media in Australia and New Zealand, where I spend most of my time, especially New Zealand, Christianity died 50 years ago. So both countries refer to the USA as that religious country. That country that's still suffering under the delusion of religion. So anyway, a very well-respected poll found out that for persons in the USA over the age of 30, adults over the age of 30, 35% of them think an open marriage is okay. And for those under the age of 30, the young adults, 51% think this is fine. This is so even the most basic barriers to animal life are now being just deconstructed. And the reason people give for one of the reasons, or some of the reasons they give for such a demoniac arrangement, is that you should be entitled to have your experiences free from inhibition, free from restriction. In that way, you discover your real self through all these processes and interactions, through all these variegated encounters. Gradually, you'll find the real you. This is a tragedy. And what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? What comes after contemplating the object of the senses, then attachment, then lust? Don't be surprised what comes next. Anger. Actually, some acharyas insert a sub-step between the lust and the anger. Frustration. They're both twins, frustration and anger. So there's the lust, and then there's the frustration that must follow. And then there must be anger. So you would wonder, why is there so much violence in the world? But who is thinking, why is there so much lust in the world? They both, in the Kali Yuga mindset, are disconnected. Over here is lust, and way over there is anger. Why is there violence? Why is there anger? To put both together, that takes the divine knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So to conclude, the Yadus are so angry they're going to kill each other. And in that way, they participate in Krishna's ending his manifest appearance and moving on with his display of pastimes and taking his eternal associates with him. He's still in Dwarka, he's still in Vrindavan, in his unmanifest Leela. All right, any questions? Yes? Rameswar Prabhu is always enthusiastic. I remember first time I was seeing him in Los Angeles chanting japa, 1975. We had just come from New York to staff the BBT, and I'd look out my window at the BBT, 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would be marching up and down Watsika Avenue. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Remember that? Of course. Yeah, I can hear you, thank you. That you're very unfortunate. I've been watching, because every day I'm having lunch with His Holiness Niranjan Maharaj. I've been watching him correct his disciples. He does it in a pointed but a very deflected way. In other words, they get the point, but he doesn't knife them. So I've been watching. What's that? Of course, it's a great sport. He said he didn't know I was watching. The greatest sport is watching Vaishnavas. I recommend it to everyone. Watch what they do. Watch how they do things. So I was watching him. He'd just make a slight comment and give a look in his eyes. So you say, what happens when you need to speak harsh words? Consider yourself unfortunate and think several times before you say harsh words. Because harsh words are practically never forgotten. You can probably remember all the times in your life someone spoke harsh words to you. It never leaves your memory, especially within a family. The other person never forgets. You forget the speaker of the harsh words because you rationalize it all. Yeah, well, I had to say like that. I had to bring truth to that person, speak truth. And the person wasn't paying me enough attention, so I had to use sharp, violent words to make my point. But that other person will never forget those words, even though you'll forget easily. The speaker of the words forgets. The one who hears never forgets. So Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita makes life much better. Anudvega karyam vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat. Think before you talk. How can I say something that's truthful, beneficial, and endearing? Make someone feel dear to me. And don't be eager to chastise or correct. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, I have to do this service. It's an austerity. Why are you so eager for such austerity? Anything else? Our senior Vaishnava, Rameshwar Prabhu, has another point.
One of the things I miss the most of Srila Prabhupada is when he would chastise me and correct me and beat me and call me a fool and so many things. I miss that so much, that my guru was taking the time to bring me to a higher platform by yelling at me.
Can you give us an example?
Well, as you said, you never forget those words.
Tell us.
Okay, I'll just tell one quick story. We were in the New York temple on West 55th Street, and we had a religious reporter from the New York Times meeting with Srila Prabhupada and having real doubts about the connection between a pure devotee and God. She openly said, so you're telling me you see God, you can speak to God, you hear God speaking to you? Sometimes I had a bad habit of blurting things out. So I then, at that moment, blurted out a quote or verse from the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna from within the heart enlightens the devotee and enables the devotee to this and this. And Prabhupada took his hand, smacked it on his desk, and pointed his finger at me and said, no, it is not like that. Then he turned to the reporter and said, to answer your question, yes, I hear God speaking to me, and I can speak with God, and I can see God. And he said it in such a penetrating way that the reporter became awestruck. And after that, she was the most respectful interviewer. But smashing me was part of that lead.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. One last question. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. Just a very quick question. In this world of make-believe, psychobabble, New Age philosophy, religious indoctrination, psychobabble, so on, how can we present this Krishna conscious philosophy to the modern mind in a way that's received well and accepted nicely so that we propagate the mission of Krishna consciousness?
What did Lord Chaitanya tell the Brahmana in South India? Yare deko tare kaho Krishna upadesh. Arma guru hoya taro idesh. Wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.